How's your day been? Day 2? Day 1 for some of us? Have you all filled your boots with ice creams and headshots and Haribo and all the snacks? What a great venue. Huge shout out to Convene for doing a cracking job of hosting what has been a fantastic event. This is our last session by the CMO, but before I do a bit of a closing, we're going to watch a video from La Droga. Thank you very much. I think we all know where we want micebook EXPO 2024 to be, right? So this has been a great event. There are 4 words that our futurist said when he talked about kind of like making sure that the events industry was future ready for transforming and delivering events to the next generation. And those were velocity, unorthodox, collaboration, and agility. So just think about those 4 words, take them away. Watch that session if you didn't drop into it, it was fantastic. Check out all the sessions that you weren't able to come to. Before I host this session, this is my last session, so I'm Neil Hudson-Basing. I'm here with conferencemcs.com. We provide MCs all across the world, from Sydney to San Francisco, for virtual, in-person and hybrid events. The program, the content has been put together by Erica. Erica, give us a wave. So if you're looking for a fantastic content producer, the content has been seamless with themes spreaded throughout that really tie beautifully together when we think about the future events. And with micebook, they've said events as a force for good, okay? And it really can be, and I think the last 2 days have shown that. So I'm going to hand over to Chet to introduce this session, Diary of the CMO. Enjoy.
Big round of applause, Neil. Thank you so much for moderating, hosting with such passion and enthusiasm. Really kept us all together. Thank you. I can drop this down, right? Thank you. Thank you all. This is the last session of the day. It's been a long couple of days, but I think you're going to love this last session. I think it's going to be brilliant. Please welcome on stage Christina Walls from IntelliFlow, but I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself in a second. Have a seat. Round of applause, please. Before we get into the session, I guess maybe context about why did we want to do this. For me, it was about trying to understand where our sector sits, does it mean, what's the value, who's in it, why do we do it, what's the ROI, are we professional enough, all of these sorts of things. Because I think sometimes we sit outside of stuff. The important stuff's here and we're over here. Sometimes that's how I feel. And I feel our sector's really devalued. Well, it was. So I wanted to hear from a professional. We could go back a slide, actually. Erica could go, yeah, thank you. I wanted to speak to a professional and how our sector fits into the marketing mix. So, before we get into it, could you introduce yourself? Tell us about you, your role and the company, and a bit of background of what you do, what you generally do in terms of your role. Thank you.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Christina. I have worked in various industries throughout my career, from hospitality, charity, professional services, and currently from asset management to fintech. So I've been at all sides of the events mix. And now I work for a company that creates technology to provide financial advisors to advise their clients. So any of you in the room that have a financial advisor, the likelihood is that they're using the technology that we create to deliver that.
And so that's what the company is. And then it's your role. What is your role? How would you define your role within the organisation?
Great question. My title probably doesn't reflect the role that I have. So Chief Marketing Officer, primarily most people think about the core marketing mix. But actually, when I built the team as part of the wider business strategy, it was, we really want to be focusing on consumer experiences. We really want to be focusing on brand building. So we have brands, the traditional marketing channels, events, and PR communications, and internal communications, and culture, and DEI.
So that all sits under you?
Yes, I'm very ambitious and driven.
So under all of those pillars, it's you are directing the organisation's strategy and approach. Okay. So we've got a good person here to extract some great information. So this is going to be quite interactive. So please think about questions, interrupt me and go, Chet, I've got to, just stop me, please do. We've got a mic runner if we need. Thanks. Okay, so the marketing mix, which is something you mentioned, tell me a little bit about pre-pandemic and what did that mean, and what does that mean post-pandemic, if there is a difference?
Great question.
It was your question. You gave it to me, so.
Are we covering this?
Yeah, I've got to be honest.
So I think you'll probably all experience any person that says that they're the same pre and post COVID is fundamentally lying to themselves as well as other people. People have been through quite a journey. It gave people an opportunity to reflect on themselves, how they want to be living their life, what they want to be doing, how they want to be prioritising themselves, their family, and their career aspirations and what they want to get out of life, whether that be short, medium, long term. What we've seen in marketing, and certainly within our sector, wasn't as badly impacted because we deal in technology, so actually we saw an uptick in business and therefore customers. The challenge we faced was in the end consumer and the experiences that people were looking for, specifically in events. So we went from full-scale, massive events to completely remote, which is really hard to provide the same type of experience and the same type of rapport and relationships online. Then we went hybrid, and now we're trying to go back to full people, and there is still a lot of resistance in the sector, and we've certainly seen it, trying to organise meetings, trying to contact people. There are a lot more barriers in place to try and break down, to start building relationships and provide value.
So the fundamental change, so you're saying, is in the attendee and their behaviour. So why do you think there's been a change with how they've interacted with events and behaved to pre and post?
There are a lot of varying factors. I think there's also a cultural aspect. It will depend on different cultural nuances globally as to how people are interacting post-pandemic. A lot of it is, sometimes there is a psychological barrier. People have social anxiety about wanting to go out and interact with people. People have fundamentally changed. They've been living their lives in quite remote places. The other part of that is then people are looking for an increased perception of value pre and post pandemic. So before, it's not like the iPhone. The iPhone came out and everyone was happy with mobile phones. Then suddenly the iPhone completely transformed the way that people were interacting with technology and therefore living their life on a day-to-day basis. If you were to ask someone now that they've experienced an iPhone, would they go back? Absolutely not. Now, there's been other competitors come into the marketplace. But fundamentally, where we've had that shift and people have had that time for reflection, what we are now seeing is that people, the perception of value, the communication, the time of communication, the length of communication, the way that people expect you to interact with them, their standards or expectations have increased dramatically. So anyone that's saying they've got exactly the same strategy or process for doing things pre versus post-pandemic, unfortunately, it's not going to work.
And finances and kind of how people are behaving now, is that kind of, how is that affecting behaviour, attendance? Are they more choosy? What's their decision factors?
Yeah, I think people have got used to being at home, especially coming into offices, taking the time to go to events. There's a perceived value of, well, it was just normal before and that's how we lived our lives. Now, I have to put a lot more time and effort into doing these things, and therefore my expectations of outcomes are so much higher, and the business's expectations of sending people to places and investing in people are much higher. So there is definitely that kind of increase of perception of value, people's personal mentality of wanting to go out, and therefore what's the value or the increase in value that you're providing in order to make that value exchange actually connected.
Okay, so in terms of pre and post COVID, things have definitely changed for you and in terms of how your organisation behaves, the types of events. This section, has anyone got any questions about, in terms of the marketing mix from a marketeer, anything they want to ask at this juncture? Yeah, please.
What percentage of your day do you spend thinking about events versus the other part of marketing, other parts of the marketing mix?
Great question. Right now, a lot. I would say, based on the work that we do, so we do lots of different types of events. So we're not just attending third-party events and showing up and wanting to get meetings and getting business on the books and driving commercial pipeline. Dependent on region that we're operating in, there is some where we're brand building and some where we're maintaining our brand presence in the marketplace. Two very, very different tactics. So we also host our own events for our own customers, giving them updates on our technology, as well as going out there and telling people about who we are at the very beginning of the life cycle. We also provide online events for our customers to keep up to date with things. So there's a full mix of lots of things going on, as well as colleague events and other bits and pieces. So right now, we've got a big event in March in Australia. We've got a big event in the UK in June, as well as lots of third-party events going out in different capacities. So from a day-to-day perspective right now, it's probably 30%.
That's good.
Yeah.
So clearly, events do form a big part of your marketing mix. In terms of the types of events, and so you've answered a few of the types of events you're doing. What are the variables that kind of dictate what you're going to deliver and where?
Great question. So very similar to my response to you. It does depend on, effectively the way I look at it, you've got 100% of a target market or a consumer group that you're looking at. And when you're thinking about, or when we're thinking about doing things, 100% of that marketplace is never going to be 100% realistic. You're never going to own it. You've got competitors, you've got lots of other things, whether it's agencies, whether it's other events, locations. About 20% of that is going to be in the moment of the actual realistic conversion that you're going to be looking at, total opportunity, because also people are not necessarily at the right time to buy. So we always look at, there's 100% of the market, but there's a 20% captive audience, and that's where the blend of, from my perspective, it's really important having events in the marketing mix, because we have lots of other ways to measure consumer interactivity, how we pull them through the funnel, how we get awareness. So back to your point, it depends by market, and we have lots of different tactics that we use across the marketing mix, dependent on market. So where we're building out in the US, we've got a lot of brand building, reputation building to do, and a lot of that comes through our social channels, which is managed by marketing, not by events. And it also comes down to when we're actually at events, how do we create memorable experiences that makes us stand out from anyone else that's attending? So I'm one of these people that's like, if I see another one of those stress balls with someone's logo on it, it's just, where we talk about ourselves as wanting to future-proof the industry. How do we do that at every single interaction that we have with someone before they even get to the event? So how are we communicating with them in a way that they've never seen or experienced before? And how do we incentivize them to want to come and see us versus anyone else that's actually attending that event as well? And then, once we do get them, how do we make sure that we keep them captive and we keep them coming through that nurture journey? So with the experience in the marketing really complements everything that we're trying to achieve at events.
It's great to hear that you're passionate and believe in the events as a massive part of the marketing channel and mix and sales funnel. Why do you think you and your organisation are behind the sector as a really important value piece? Do you think what do you think the factors are that makes events important to you or the organisation?
Great question.
That was mine.
It was, yeah. We really wanted to know. I may be unique, not just the fact that I'm nearly 6 foot in heels and a redhead. There's not many of me around. However, I had 7 years in hospitality, and it really changed my mindset about how to think about guest experience at the time, now evolved into consumer experience. And for all of that, I'm very fortunate that I have incredible allies in my business that truly believe in everything that we're doing. And it does help when you've got that senior leader buy-in. The fact that we were able to create our business from scratch 2 years ago with support from our parent company, but we were able to bring it together. We managed to redefine everything from the very beginning. So there are so many variables. It depends on industry type, it depends on the support you have from leadership, it depends on the actual business itself and how it's set up. So our parent company, as an example, have a completely different section for events. They don't sit within the marketing function. However, what we are starting to see is, as they're seeing how we're showing up and the success that we're having events, and sometimes we're at the same events, they're actually now re-looking at how they do things. So a lot of it is prove to people how it works. Sometimes you can have business cases and ways of communicating things and it doesn't get through. Once people see it working and in action, that's sometimes where you can get the best traction, the best results.
It's interesting because we had another panellist before who was a CMO from a HR tech company. We had a call with them, and the first thing she said was, I don't really believe in events. I was like, oh, well, it's our last panel of the day. So anyway, we quickly, it wasn't, I wasn't against her coming on the panel because I thought we've got to hear this. Why are you against events? And then I thought, actually, after listening to her answers, I was like, okay, this is not going to be a good panellist. But that's why I was quite interested. That's why I was quite interested to hear why did that person was so anti-events, and also I wouldn't say you're similar businesses, but it was interesting. So I don't have a question here, but it was a really funny call that me and Erica had last week, and I was like, oh shit.
But actually, even that in itself, when you connect that back to the pre-post COVID. One of the big topics that came up post-COVID, specifically from a marketing, full marcoms mix perspective, was there have been a lot of make or break of different roles, industries when it comes to COVID. And marketing was one of those ones where it's going to make or break marketeers' careers. Because if people are not willing to think very differently post-COVID and future-proof and think with a digital mindset and think with a consumer-orientated mindset, given what everyone's been through, if people think the same strategies that existed post-COVID, they can just lift and shift, they're not going to survive. So there is an element of how do you future-proof. The other thing maybe to bear in mind is that when we created this business, we built it specifically like, I don't know if you know the lemonade of the insurance world, where we want to transform the industry from the inside out. So the way that we've created our brand, it doesn't look like the traditional stuffy, we've got financial platforms for you to transform your business advisors that, fundamentally can be very well stereotypicalized. So what we want to do was to completely shake up, take people from their subconscious into their conscious mindsets when they see it, because they're not expecting to see these things, they're not expecting these types of interactions. So where you normally have day-to-day interactions and the same when you show up events, where people expect something, do it differently. Get them to really come into their conscious mindset. By doing that, they're much more likely to remember you and remember the interaction, not just as a person, but what we've actually provided to them as part of the value exchange.
Yeah, and something you said earlier is standing still is going backwards, and this is about the iPhone, isn't it? So
Yeah.
is that the messaging here is we have to constantly evolve? Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of theories and a lot of talk about this around, you know, the phone industry is a perfect example, or actually, for anyone that's UK focused right now, the Royal Mail is another great example of they haven't thought about the business transformation, how they need to future-proof themselves, as a result of which everyone else has been taking over, transforming their businesses, and now they just stepped and they're actually going, they're not doing anything, but as a result of not future-proofing, they're going backwards. So the same when you think about interactions you have with people, they're probably having the same conversations with the same people every single day. How is yours different? How do you want to come across? How do you want that person walking away from a conversation and going, I'm going to remember that person because of X, Y, or Z? And consistently, I think that's one of the biggest challenges. But there's a lot of room for really thinking about who you're speaking to, why you're speaking to them, and what you want your outcomes to be.
Okay. All right, so that section was really about, for me, I was just really interested to see how events plays a part in the marketing mix. Hands up if you think you're in the marketing mix sector, like as an industry. Only a handful. So hands up if you think you're in the events industry. Okay, so does that goes to show, right, that we don't think we're part of the marketing mix. Is that right? Is that interesting?
Yeah.
Well, tell me.
It's quite frightening, actually, from my perspective, because there is so much value to be had, because they're common goals, right, across whether it's marcoms, whether it's events, we're all after the same thing, and that's providing value, providing commercial returns for our businesses, and providing a memorable experience that gets you that repeat customer that's coming through. So, and there's so many synergies and learnings that could be had and experience that can actually be optimised across both of those different segments.
Interesting. Who's just got a question about marketing mix in our... Please, Judy.
Yeah, so my question is, after COVID, so what percentage of your marketing budget was events before COVID, and what percentage has that changed since COVID? Because it's really confusing at the moment. Like last year, there was almost this 2 years of pent-up not having events happening. So we had things that had been cancelled from 2019 almost, or 2020 pushed forward.
Yeah.
Were we just busy because there was that happening, everybody wanted an event, and then they had marketing budget they wanted to spend so they didn't lose it. Like when we were trying to plan, years ago you used to be able to plan what was going to happen 18 months ahead, didn't you? Because we all knew that people booked 18 months ahead. Now, I mean, we've got inquiries for 600 people for next week. It just it's bonkers out there.
Yeah.
So it's understanding for us to understand how much of your, you've got a huge marketing spend presumably for the type of client to us you would be. Like, what percentage is that events? And then post-COVID, has that changed a lot?
Yes, is the easy answer. We went through quite a rigorous exercise during COVID when we weren't doing events to really reevaluate the role of events as part of marketing mix. And we used a lot of different metrics and methodology to determine what success looked like. And then what we did was for each region, we basically put through a prioritisation of, what's brand building versus what's commercial driving for us. And therefore we came back with a methodology that said, okay, this is everything we believe we absolutely have to attend, either to maintain brand presence or to increase pipeline. But the biggest part of that is also, we don't work in isolation. It's really important we have input from other colleagues across the business. So sales, for example, here's our proposal, priority 1, 2, 3, what do you think? So during COVID gave us a real opportunity to reflect on the role of events, what are the success factors, and post-COVID, we have actually, I would say on average, increased by up to about 20% our investment in events, especially in emerging markets like the US and Australia. Because, if you're not there, you can't play. You can't win business.
Anyone else got a question? Zoe?
That was too many questions. You mentioned there about the success criteria. What would you define as your key metrics for the effectiveness of events?
Great question. Depends on the type of event. So if I take as an example, if we're going out to a third-party event as Intelliflow and wanting to acquire new business, dependent on market as well, so there's lots of variables. If we're going out in the US and wanting to acquire new business, we do a lot of work early on. So we would expect the list of attendees to come through at least 4 to 6 weeks in advance. We would then start prospecting through that list and prioritising that list of who we will need to speak to, who we're getting meetings booked in with at that event. And then when we're there, then we have nurture email campaigns that are coming through, social media for anyone that hasn't yet joined or is attending that event to say, we're going to be here, come and speak to us, we're the new kid in town, cool and funky and want to do business with you. So there's a lot of that. So most of our events we plan at least, contract 6 to 9 months out, but the marketing activity starts about 3 months out and we start nurturing through. So that's one metric, which is pre-activity. During the event itself is the number of prospect contact details that we can get and have conversations with and potentially demo or, show videos of our capabilities. And then post-event, it's then up to the sales team to follow through. So normally it can take 6 to 9 months to at least get some tangible figures on it. But in most cases, by the time we get to that, it's what's the conversion, not the number of people we've spoken to, but what's the conversion of number of people we've spoken to versus who we're actually starting to have conversations with. And that's the really important factor, because if you say to sales, we're giving you a target to speak to 300 people, we're just going to get rubbish leads, and it's not a good use of anyone's time. So most of that as well is around quality, not quantity.
Okay, so what I heard there was the bit about the field marketing is the bit that you do free, and you get this big chunk of people that are going to come into the space, and the magic happens in the space. So that's really important, that brand experience convinces that person enough that they're actually going to go into they're going to be converted into tangible business that's going to drive the bottom line. So I imagine that when you go up the ladder to your peers and you're presenting your findings or your results, like the thing that you're most proud of presenting is that conversion figure.
Yes and no. My business is very commercially orientated. The biggest challenge I have is showing the value of our brand, because that's one of the hardest metrics to actually prove within marketing. So that's where the experience element of it. So sometimes it can be 3-4 days event. I mean, this is going to sound terribly terribly bad of me, but I did spend 4 days on a beach in LA last year, but it was hard work. And I went specifically to where we were going into the market for the first time. I really wanted to make sure, is this an event that we can see ourselves at in the future? Because these things are not cheap to bring lots of people together and actually invest in lots of colleagues attending. And in that moment as well, it's what's the experience we want to provide for people. So actually, that was one tangible example of we want to be seen as a fun brand and a fun business and fun at building people relationships. So, for example, we were on the beach. Everyone else was just handing out, I don't know, there were some sweets over here and some sunglasses over here. They were very nice sunglasses, thanks Morningstar. But we actually, and stress balls and pens and all that stuff. We got a surfboard. And we had a QR code on the surfboard, and we got people to take a photo, put it on social media. So again, it helps brand awareness, it helps push ourselves in those networks. Much cheaper for us to do that than them to do that than us to pay for it. And we had a competition. So who could get the best selfie on a surfboard? When we're going this year, we're actually having one of those surfboards that moves as well, so that people can we can have team sports and people can play with it. So just trying to get engaging experience. So most of it for me is the balance of, this was the awareness we got through social media, all of our, not just interactions, but the engagement that we had from that as well, because that's a really critical factor. And then the commercial element of what was the pipeline and kind of traditional, as much as I hate to say it, MQL and SQL that comes off the back of it. The challenge is manage expectations of what time you're going to get those metrics through post-event. Because most people are going, right, what did we get? We finished the event now, what are the results? I'm like, you're not going to get that tangibly for a while.
Well, was there a link between the surfboard and the platform that you're selling?
There wasn't. Great question. It was more that we wanted to be seen to be... this was the first event ever in the industry that was outside. It was the first time that these organisers had actually broke away from one of the large corporate event companies and wanted to do something very, very different. So for us it was, how do we kind of, with an event company that have got very similar values to us, that they want to transform the industry from the inside out, how do we support them in doing it? So for us, it was much more fun, and where that event was much more around brand awareness. The other thing I mandated, every single person that showed up to the event was in a branded t-shirt. And when you walk around, don't walk around by yourself, you have to go with at least 2 or 3 other people, so people cannot miss you, and they will always have that logo. So the conscious and the unconscious brand awareness then became really strong, because we were known as, you know, the fun stand to come and chat to. The other real quick win was, it was absolutely baking, sun coming down, there wasn't much shade. Day one I went, there's only one water station right at the end of about 300 stands. Get some water bottles, get some ice buckets, and then we became known as people just coming in to get water. So again, the quantity versus quality, we could get lots of people coming to the stand, and very quickly we could then identify who's actually really interested, who's a good prospect, and then they're the people that we can spend our time with. So a lot of that is also coming out of the traditional way of being at events of some colleagues, and we're still taking them through a journey, or in that traditional, I'm just going to stand on the stand all day and I'm going to wait for people to drop in my lap like a golden ticket. That doesn't work anymore. It's okay to have conversations and go out there. So again, it's that mindset post-COVID. Some people are still a little bit concerned, I think, to be going out there and doing things, and most of it is just nurture, it's okay, you're in a safe place, just go out there and have a conversation. You never know where it leads.
I mean, that's a really nice segue to the next point. Something you mentioned to me earlier is, you said these types of events, as in this micebook EXPO, are really hard. Explain.
They are really hard. One, I think we've certainly found it in some situations where our colleagues haven't done as much upfront to have meetings in the diary. And that's incredibly challenging, because then it's my marketing money and it's my investment, and I'm relying on other colleagues to actually have business on the books and have meetings already set up and stuff being done. So that balance of clear roles and responsibilities, because, and I put it back on them to say, look, if you haven't, here are the stage gates, if you haven't got this amount of meetings X weeks before the event, we're not doing this next year. Because if you can't show me that you're really dedicated to wanting to make this a success, and you're telling me that you want leads and you want business out of this, then help me help you. So it's all about partnership and doing these things. And I think, you know, a lot of it is, you have to work harder for business now. It's just becoming that world where, as I said, people's expectations have changed, people's perception of value have changed, and therefore where sometimes people are a little bit more last minute about whether they're attending or not. And this is the challenge we face, where we're trying to get lists weeks in advance to do nurture campaigns, and then suddenly it comes to the day and the dropout rates seem to be increasing quite dramatically. Something else has come up, so people's commitment to things has also definitely been through a bit of a challenging time, which is hard to plan for in many ways.
Yeah, I think last year, I haven't done the data stats, but last year's Expo, 2/3 of our registrations were in the last 2 weeks to 3 weeks, which is really interesting. And I think that is not going to change anytime soon for our sector. Would you agree? Would you see everyone's seeing the same thing? Apart from, well, and so you used a term which flaky, and our industry is quite flaky. I think we've all known that. But yesterday, Max from Able Max came up to me and said, it was so nice. Like, she was in the back here and she said, it was like old times. I had appointments and they all showed up. But it was such a weird thing to say, but it was actually, she was just saying that people used to show up. They used to commit to things and they showed up. And it shouldn't be a thing that she should have to say, but we get it. I'm probably the same as well. I'm very last minute, and I don't know how we change that, to be honest, or do we just accept it and we have to make the experience so fluid that it can embrace people to come last minute and so on. But
I think we're still going through a transition. You think post-COVID, even, most people were in office Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And then suddenly we went on Zoom. And I don't know about you, but it was exhausting to then put all of your energy into one place and multiple of faces and screens, and it's really hard to maintain your energy back to back to back to back Zoom calls. And then you suddenly go, right, now I've got to go out and meet people. I've got to relearn how to give my energy from one focal point to multiple focal points of lots of different varying ranges of energy at different times of day. And I think some people are still just going through a period of transition back to what a don't know if people are still using the term, but like what new normal looks like now. So some people are just getting exhausted and just not able to have the same amount of energy to put into things, unfortunately, as well.
Okay, I'm going to move on to a related topic about, again, the event sector being more professional. And what I mean by that is, one example is that in the room we don't even feel we're part of the marketing mix. And my example was the PR industry and the advertising industry have really, I think they've got metrics that are understood and they can charge accordingly and they can report accordingly, and the ROI is fairly understood, and hence their rates are up there and they can charge them because they've just got all the data stats. We, I think, find that quite hard in the events industry. It's a lot more looser. There is such value, and I'm so pleased to hear I have someone on stage who sees the value in that, but it's so much harder. But then, could we be more professional as an industry? I'm using PR and ad as another part of the marketing mix, who I feel have got it better, but tell me your thoughts, because what do you think? Can we be more professional? Are they more professional?
I think it comes down to your definition of what professional really means.
Charging more money.
Charging more money.
charging the value that we should get is what I mean.
I feel like there's a Jerry Maguire moment coming up. Most of this comes back down to the perception of value, I think. You can, personally in my mind, if I'm looking at any third-party supplier, and we've spoken about PR agencies, personally, I don't believe in their calculations. I've got 3 PR agencies in 3 different countries, and they keep coming up with these metrics. One even the other day presented it to me related to commercial value, and I was like, yeah, I just sorry, no, that's not floating my boat, and I can't put that into my core marketing ROI commercial methodology. It doesn't fit. So I think when it comes back down to how do you want to be seen to be more professional, I think most of the value exchange is actually on the interactions. So you can look at this lots of different ways. Do you perceive professional and therefore the relationship with commercial or money to be a one-hit wonder, or do you see that as the definition of repeat business? Because repeat business is where you build that value and where people are going to want to come back to you, because trust is one of the biggest things that's come out post-COVID as well. Can I trust you? Are you reliable? Do you live up to your statements and the commitments that you make? There's a lot of people that can't do that anymore, and that's becoming a really clear USP space. The other piece is having the right metrics to actually demonstrate that value. So when you are providing services, how are you actually having key inflection points to get the right data to validate your worth and your value to your client?
Well, yes, please.
It's kind of going off the back of that a little bit, but just focusing, on sponsorship and the value you're getting from presuming you do sponsor events. It's completely evolved over the last few years, but I think a lot of firms maybe don't understand what they should be looking for in terms of ROI, and because it's branding you're getting from this, it isn't tangible. And it would be good to know what your expectations would be. As a big firm, we do sponsor events. You mentioned people stand a stand. I held an event here a few months ago, and I had 400 people, and someone sponsor said to me afterwards, "Yeah, you had loads of people here. It was great, but no one visited my stand." And I was like, "Yeah, oh, what do you want me to do?"
Yeah.
A little bit like, how can maybe we be more transparent about expectations when I can't give you a list 6 months out for you to do your planning because no one's registering until 2 years before.
Right.
It's a very hard balance. So it's kind of how do we manage your expectations?
Yeah. And actually, interestingly, so I've on both sides of that in the last year. One, where I'm turning up as a sponsor, as an exhibitor, and 2, where we have our own events and we look for sponsorship revenue to help support the running of the event itself. And we had exactly the same situation last year where we invited sponsors in, and the biggest feedback was, great, loved it, got loads of information, but there were so many sessions that no one had any time to actually come out and speak to us, and actually we didn't get many opportunities to get new business, to acquire new business. So there is a balancing act, and I think there is it's like an employee value proposition. There's got to be a connectivity between the two, and to your point, it's aligning expectations up front. So where you are having sponsors coming in, they've got to understand not everything is on a silver platter for them. And again, it's not that we're just going to deliver pipeline into your exhibitor stand. It's this is your opportunities of where you can look for acquiring your own business or doing communications up front, whatever that needs to be. But what are the key inflection points throughout the event as well? When you know there's lunches, and again, it sounds like a bit of a traditional way about looking at events, but are there extra sponsorship opportunities that could be coming as part of that package? So one of the things we're looking at this time around for our events is what's the value we're giving to sponsors? It can't just be a pay this money and show up. It's got to be a how can we actually give you opportunities, very like you've done today, at the beginning of sessions to actually use promotional inflection points and then pointing them to people, or actually getting them involved in some of the conversations rather than just being there and having a stand. So again, I think there's lots of different ways you can look at how to increase the perceived value for either being a sponsor or providing opportunities for sponsors.
Who else feels our sector, or who's got an idea of how we can make our sector more professional, if you deem it not? When I say that, we are extremely professional. We just need to be recognised for it. So who's got an idea? Anyone about how do we get more recognised for that? We know there's so many charging models, like especially things like commission and markups. We don't charge day rates officially, really. And if you did the hourly rates of how much we work, it's like £12 an hour or something stupid, Anyone got an idea? Or is it just me that feels that actually we are professional, we're getting paid our worth? Yes?
Hi. I would say actually we probably, from what I've seen, cover up a lot of the hard work. So all of the hard work happens is that thing, isn't it? Like a duck on the water. All the madness happens, and I know you don't want to show the client that, but we're very good at presenting our final project and being like, wow, this event was amazing. No one really sees all of those kind of behind the scenes, so it's demonstrating that value is all of the hard work into that kind of project rather than just this is the outcome.
Yeah, very good point. Yes, please, Linda.
I was going to say something similar because I think that there's a lot of
Sorry, just wait for the microphone. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar because I think there's so much experience that people have, and we just give it away. We literally just give it away, and I'm guilty of this, and I'm sure everybody is. But you don't realise when you're talking to clients and you're talking about experiences, you're talking about all the different events that you've done, you're literally just giving them everything away. And if you look at other industries, they give you enough just for you to be curious, but they don't give you the whole thing. But in our desire to sell ourselves, we're literally just pouring everything down for them.
Yeah, there was that whole debate in the pandemic when we should be charging for proposals, and there was a real movement to try and do that, and venue find and all of this work, and how much did all of you guys move to business free of charge 5 times or whatever? We do give it away. We put out a lot, don't we? Yeah.
I think I know it's different, but the world of experiential has figured out how to create a lot more fame around its activations, and that's through the use of digital media and creating activations that are interesting for people to engage in through YouTube and various other digital channels. So if you look at Red Bull and some of the amazing activations they do, even in a Westfield pop-up from a brand, will be inviting consumers to come in and engage with it, but there'll be something there, like your surfboard example, where you've got to create a selfie and share it and count the likes. Anything that can be done to create further engagement that can be measured can then be used to leverage a conversation with a client, I think, to be able to charge a certain amount, or at least measure it against a certain amount.
Well, this is when the pandemic hit and we all went digital and virtual, and the argument was there's a lot more data sets, and this is why you should do it all virtual and so on, because you can measure it a lot more actively, how much sessions did they watch and blah, blah, blah. However, we have all gone quite a lot back to life, but the pandemic did do one thing in that, and I was saying earlier that the agencies got back up to the seat at the table with the C-suite. And prior to that, we were just bookers and, just find a hotel with some bedrooms and so on. We were just executors, but we got more strategic. So do you work with agencies? How do you deliver your event program? How internally, externally?
The events colleagues within our marketing function deal directly, and every single time that we have a new event coming up, if it's the events that we own, so for UK and Australia, it goes through an RFP.
To an agency, event
Yeah.
third party, okay.
We are very cognizant, exactly as I've been on the same side as all of you, that we don't want to waste people's time. So one of the things, we're very transparent up front and say, right, here are our requirements. FYI, there are 3 people in the pitch. This isn't a way to play off against each other. We're just being transparent. This is the budget. Excuse me. I haven't got the C word, I promise.
Thank you.
But I think there is... we then manage through that process. The one thing that we do, because I'm very cognizant of this sector, we always have 10% contingency. And that's part with the agency. We know there's going to be other stuff, and it's not fair on the agency to swallow that cost. So when I think outside of the event sector, and with all of the agencies I've worked with over my career, there is one that stands out that I would go back to every single time, not from an events perspective, but just when you take that same methodology and plug it into here, they are so transparent with their pricing. And the one thing I think the events industry has struggled with for a long period of time, there's always a negotiation. People are always wanting stuff for free, and they've got their budget and they don't want to pay more for it. But back to the point, where's the value? Because the more you're bringing down margins, the more you're actually impacting the end experience that you're going to get. So it's how do we start positioning this around, and it may be, I think someone made a point from who it was around, are there 3 different types of pricing model? With this pricing model you get this level of support and kind of this standard. So you reverse the psychology around to go, if you want this price, but this is the service you get, and you can start doing different tiered standards. But you have to be really strict on it to say, well, actually, you're going into this, so what we'll do is we can add a top up, and it means this and this and this. But being really, really clear up front, I think sometimes I do feel sorry for people, because people just chip away, and then margins are completely eradicated. And to your point, then you get disengaged colleagues, and it all becomes a bit challenging.
Who wants Christina as a client? Oh my God. Okay, final question, because I'm conscious that it is nearly come up to 5. Any advice for our sector going forward, coming out of everything you've learned? What can we do to make your life easier, to make the sector more buoyant, professional, and deliver for you?
Be bold.
Ooh.
Don't just do what you've always done before. Think about things differently. And it's very easy, and back to one of your earlier questions around, is it me, is it the sector, is it different? I've always wanted to challenge myself around, I don't want to just do what everyone else is doing. I want to do things different. I want people to remember the brands I work on in a very, very different way, and the experiences that we provide. So what I say to my team as well, they're empowered to, if you've seen it before, we don't want to do it. Like, let's transform things in a very different way. The way that we write things, the images that we use, the way that we create experiences, the way we think about how to connect with people. And all of this loops back down to, if you were to walk away from a client today and you wanted them to remember 3 words about the interaction, what would those 3 words be? And then it might start to change the way that you interact with people. But the biggest thing, be bold, don't be fearful. If it doesn't work, it's okay, but at least you know and you've tried it. So definitely shake the tree up a bit. Let's shake this industry up.
Absolutely love that. Okay, we've got time for a couple of questions. If any general questions at all for Christina. Yeah, no one else is.
Like you obviously, it sounds like you do a lot in terms of the remit of your role and the regions that you cover. Like, what keeps you awake at night?
Oh God. Professionally, I'm incredibly driven, but there is a reason for that. And most of you, as mainly females in the room, and not to isolate any men, we, especially in my sector, there is a real underrepresentation of women, and I'm currently the only female in a cohort of C-suite men. And what keeps me up at night is, have I done enough today for my female colleagues? Have I done enough today to show the value of women to men that sometimes need re-educating on why it's important to have equality in the workplace? So that's my big thing.
Anyone else? Final question? Anyone? If not, anyone? No? If not, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Massive round of applause. Absolutely loved that session. Thank you so much for coming by and sharing that insight. And yeah, you're going to be hounded on LinkedIn, by the way.
Very welcome.
Finally, for me to say thank you to all of you for your attention, for your commitment, for supporting EXPO 23. I really hope we have delivered some value to you. I definitely know that we want to deliver more. We'll learn each time. I won't keep any more words. Thank you. Have a great, safe journey home. Thank you.